Kutcher's emceeing this from here now.
Michael Graham, are you going to get your question across? Hurry up, please.
Sorry, Kutcher.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kutcher.
First of all, Michael Graham. I am Jar Jar Rung and Wiradjuri, Waiwaroo. I'm also a father of 10, grandfather of 9, one on the way. I came here yesterday on my way and I was pretty excited. You know, we're talking treaty and that's good for all of us. I thought it would be good for healing us as individuals, collectives, potentially the country. I was saddened when I got here because there was no welcome to country, and I'm here to speak about the people of this country without their permission. That's hard. And then it was Sorry Day as well, and we shouldn't have been doing this business on Sorry Day. But putting that aside, I sit on 3 boards of organisations, and so I try to support them as best I can. Sometimes not so good, but I do the best I can. I'm a little bit concerned about who's going to be representing me and my family. Now, we've got that proposed or that kind of model we're talking about. All of those bodies that were up on there were all funded by government. And so for me, it's about empowering people. And we've heard from many people across here that they haven't been able to get onto those organisations. So that's a concern. And it's not just, you know, what Lydia said. It was Tracy mentioned about land title groups or whatever those groups are called and the failures that they've had. I'd like to just propose that we look at, and sorry Rob, but some kind of voting mechanism that allows everybody across the state to vote who they want, but to make sure that there's rules in place that say you can't be all from the one mob. You can't be all from the one family. It's got to be divided. It's got to be. It's a complex system I'm talking about, but we already have that system. It's the system that says I can marry Shelley because we're not related. You know, that's the system. It's complex. We've been using it for thousands of years, so it's there. We've just got to reinstate it. The other thing that bothers me is that, and listening to all of the disputes, is what's the dispute response? You know, how do we, if we've got an issue, how do we then address that? Who do we address it to? Are we going to the government to say, can you fix our problem because we've got a dispute? Or are we looking for our elders to do that? So that's another mechanism that needs to be in place. I'm walking away today after that last session feeling uncomfortable. I feel like the wool's been put over our eyes now, and we're ticking the box for the government, and thanks for coming, but we've got a model we've already been talking with the people we give money to about. This is how it's going to work. That's just how I feel.
Yeah.
And it's not just me, and I might be totally wrong. But that's how I feel, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who aren't here today that will perceive that's how it is. And perceiving that can be more damaging than what's actually happening.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, Jason, you know, a couple of things there that have been raised that have been pretty consistent over the past couple of days, and that is proper representation that isn't weighted heavily in favour of an organisation, a particular clan or a family group. Interesting what you raised there about the questions around voting. And one of the things that obviously when we vote in a general election is there is a proportional representation system. So one electorate with more people doesn't necessarily cancel out the electorate of someone with fewer people. So there are models to look at that. And I think dispute resolution is a really critical issue, and we addressed that yesterday. Yeah. Can you just summarise some of the things that arose out of these 2 days around the question of dispute resolution and potential mechanisms for ensuring there is a valid, wide-ranging representation?
So the dispute resolution mechanism, I think it was a really strong call that we heard through the regional forums. So it's been consistent, and I think it's a really mature call that the Aboriginal community, our community, are saying we need to find out we need to find a way to resolve some of these ongoing challenges. I think it's a really mature call. I mean, it gives me great hope and optimism that we're moving to a point where we want to be more mature in terms of how we resolve our disputes. Now, I grew up in a community that didn't always resolve its disputes in a mature way, but they got resolved.
Not always healthily. But
not always healthily. And I'm sure everybody in the room would sort of know what I'm talking about there. So I think it's a really fun... So, Mick, I think it's a brilliant question. I think it's consistent and congruent with what we've been hearing for the last couple of months. I think it's a very particular question that an interim steering council can help us answer, because I don't think it's the role of government to answer that. I can have a view as an Aboriginal person, but I think it's one of the fundamental questions that an interim steering council needs to consider, give some context to then bring back for broader discussion. So I don't think it's government's job to identify what that is. How do we empower people, and how do we provide a mechanism for that to occur? I think the answer's in the room. The interim steering council, I think, can help us bring that to life. The other one about the election process, I concur with what you've spoken about. And in some of the models that Richard put up today, they are relatively complex in some regards versus relatively simple, as we've sort of been speaking through this afternoon in regards to how do we get to an interim position around representation, however you want to define that. The thing we need to be clear about, the overlay of a full election and nominations process needs to be balanced against time. So we need to be clear about what that means for the community. And if we want to spend more time doing that and missing out on a bigger opportunity, the community just need to be aware of that. So that if we want to spend the next 6 months, 9 months, whatever the amount of months are, working out what that mechanism is, Mick, if that's where the community want to spend their time, there will be a consequence to that. And that's the complex challenge we're all trying to negotiate in our own minds, and why I think everybody sits here with degrees of uncertainty. But I know when I really think back to my purpose and the purpose that I've felt and seen in the last 2 days, we can get back into a place of optimism and a place of hope. So if we want to go through a really detailed election process, nominations process and probity process, because that's what you're asking, it's going to take some time, which we may then lose out at the other end. So that's neither here nor there. That's just the reality we need to understand by way of how we work through it.
Okay, there's one final question.